Hello everybody, welcome to Also Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference in how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm. Here are some more hot takes. They're about specifically free agency stuff, signings, all that, what the teams will look like next year. Subsequently, because of those signings, you get it, let's get into it. The Pacers will be a top 6 seed. Now, if you take a look at the Eastern Conference, the bottom is thinning out a little bit, so I could see maybe Indiana making a push. I liked a lot of the moves they made this offseason, in particular, of course, Bruce Brown, as well as trading for Obi Toppin. I believe strongly in the connection between playmakers and play finishers and the importance of making sure you have a good combination and the correct mix of that. And I think in the case of the Nuggets, they showed how valuable that is, where you find someone who can get guys open, who can make amazing passes, and you find guys who are good at hitting a catch and shoot or, rolling to the basket and getting a dunk or whatever. Guys who you're creating for, but are going to hit those damn shots, like a Michael Porter Jr. or an Aaron Gordon cutting back door or a Jamal Murray, So that's cool. And Obi Toppin, obviously, he's a pick and roll guy. Tom Thibodeau has used him as a pick and pop guy, as a floor spacer, even not even really as a pick anything. And he's going to roll to the basket, and he's going to have Tyrese Halliburton throwing him lobs, and he's going to have the best season of his career. You can book that now. So that's another play finisher. And then Bruce Brown, while he does stuff with the ball in his hands, excellent cutter. He's become a very reliable catch and shoot player. He's just great as well. Just more people for Halliburton to dime the hell up. Chris Paul will have a somewhat of a bounce-back year with the Warriors, 15% better than last year, and will flourish as the sixth man for the Warriors. Also think the Warriors as a team will be better. Can't be worse than Poole was in the playoffs, plus less tension in the locker room. I do agree, at least contrasting last year's playoffs to, obviously, Chris Paul would be better than what Jordan Poole was last year. That's fair, but also I would, compare this Warriors team to the Warriors team that won a championship 2 years ago and say, hey, you were really good because of Jordan Poole a lot of the time, and you don't have that anymore. And is Chris Paul going to replicate that version of really good or be on that level of impactful? I don't think that's necessarily the case, especially in significant moments where, Jordan Poole can shoot you out of a playoff game, but he can also shoot you into one. And he had those moments in that postseason run, and that was very pivotal. So there's two sides of the coin. Jordan Poole can still be a very good basketball player, and Chris Paul, I think, is a little weird in the Warriors system. Don't get me wrong, I think he'll figure it out. He's a smart guy, but it's weird. It's definitely weird. The Warriors are not really a pick and roll team. They're also not much of a mid-range team. They like to run and gun, whereas Chris Paul is obviously more slow and methodical, especially in his older age. I think there's some weird contrast, especially the fact that him and Steph would be playing a lot of big minutes together when Chris is not very good defensively anymore. I just think it's a little odd, and I feel it's a complete wild card. By no means would I be surprised if Chris Paul was pretty freaking good in Golden State, but I have to see it first before I can really imagine it. The Wizards won the offseason. We got a hard reset on our roster and retained Kuzma as an asset for future trades down the line on an affordable deal. We'll be one of the most fun teams to watch next year with Poole paired with Kuz. Now, me personally, I don't give a damn about Kyle Kuzma in Washington, but I do agree I'm going to be interested in Jordan Poole. I was someone who bought just some Jordan Poole stock a little bit earlier than others, so I still have some belief in his upside. He does stuff objectively that's you're pulling off moves that only star players pull off. It's just a matter of if the shot goes in after he does it. But when it is, man, he's good. And statistically, when Jordan Poole has played without Stephen Curry, he has looked very good and put up super good numbers. And I do definitely think that he will be fun in Washington. And I think getting him for Chris Paul that was a freaking home run, man. Like, I know it like becomes in a weird way for Bradley Beal, obviously, but like it seemed before that you were just gonna get Chris Paul and you were gonna have to like buy him out or trade him for practically nothing. But you got a guy who's like 24 who, you know, has never been in a system that like was very liberating for him. I do think the Warrior system is particularly liberating for a lot of types of players, but specifically the like guy who likes to dribble like Jordan Poole does, take the shots like Jordan Poole does, doesn't quite fit in as much in Golden State, and it always felt like Jordan Poole didn't quite fit in Golden State. So I like what Washington did. Given what they had, man, they're going in a great direction. And if I do a 2K series next year, which I definitely won't because I always say that I will and then won't, but if I did, I'd probably go with the Wizards because I'm just compelled by them for sure. But yeah, that's enough about them. I don't give a damn about Kyle Kuzma though. The Chicago Bulls are becoming the Washington Wizards, extending Vucevic and not making any moves towards rebuilding. I didn't exactly love the Vucevic extension news. However, it was also a really good, really tradable contract, so I don't care. Like, the thing that bothers me about this contract is what it represents far more than the money itself or anything like that. 20 mil's good for Vooch. But a 3-year deal, you know, to someone in his 30s, it seems like you're committing to this fucking team that no one should commit to. This is not a team worth committing to. It's a team worth giving up on in every capacity. So, if they're bringing him in to get rid of him, that's a great move. If they're not, I am annoyed. That's my overall synopsis here. But yes, it seems like with Washington having blown up this team finally, the Bulls are now the face of committing hard to mediocrity. Dillon Brooks deserves that $80 million contract. He's a good defender and worth having even though his offense sucks. I gotta say, there are, God, such a short list of defenders that I would be willing to pay what that equivalent of money is, like just good role player money, for someone who is like maybe a top 20 defensive player, but a fucking massive negative on the offensive end. You just don't pay players that do that. Guy, like, that's like, okay, he's freaking, what's his name? Andre Roberson with worse shot selection. Like, okay, that's not a $20 fucking million a year player. Like, even if Dillon is what people say he is, he's not a $20 million player. And what people say he isn't even freaking accurate. I think, yeah, he's a pretty good defender, an overrated one, but a good defender. But if you shoot the ball as much as Dillon Brooks does while being bad at it, it is unlikely there is any amount of defense you can play that makes up for how much that hurts your team. Defense just does not have that ability to make up for shit in the way that offense does. That's why offensive players get paid more than defensive players. That's just the reality of the situation, especially in a league that is more offensive oriented than it used to be. So with all that in mind, Dillon Brooks is not worth $20 fucking million a year, and it will be impossible to convince me of such. The Rockets are the first team to spend $70 million in one offseason and get worse. Okay, I decided to include this take right after because this is bad on the opposite end of the spectrum. I don't think Houston got worse. I think that's a silly statement. Like, pretty much objectively, they got better. Now, Dillon Brooks has been a net negative throughout his entire career, but it's not like Houston has been playing a ton of net positive basketball that Dillon would be interrupting. I don't think he will necessarily be a huge negative, especially if he does limit his shot selection significantly, which I think there is a chance he does that. But if he doesn't do it, then yeesh, what a contract. Overall, though, Fred VanVleet was an all-star point guard like 2 years ago. He had a rough year this year. That doesn't mean he can't turn it around. So I am fully thinking he's probably going to average like 23 and 8 with this team. And then, of course, they drafted one of the Thompson twins. They drafted that one guy who fell really low for them. Also signed Jeff Green. I think they signed some other role player. What's his name? The Jock Lawndale, I think. They have just improved their roster through and through, unquestionably, in every capacity. It's just a matter of, was it worth throwing $220 million at Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks? That's a different question. But also for Houston, man, like when was the money really going to matter? Like, they don't really have to worry about paying their young guys until those contracts are wrapping up. Dillon would probably be around for like 1 or 2 years making that money when like Jalen Green, for example, is making big money. Jabari Smith is getting his payday. You know, the Thompson twin, I always forget which ones they are, but you know, they're twins. They're easy to mix up. But either way, Houston just got better through and through, unquestionably so. And I also don't think it came at a huge detriment to their future. It's more weird than anything else, frankly. But I will forever hate them for giving Dillon that payday. Yes, I am hating and pocket watching. I don't care anymore. Marcus Smart on the Grizzlies will be the most significant trade of this decade. He can bring back the grit and grind style in a new era. Most significant trade of this decade is wild. Marcus Smart, brother. Marcus Smart, the most. I do think it's possible this could be a trade that goes down as like, wow, that ended up being kind of a mistake, because I am a big believer in Marcus Smart, although he did have a kind of questionable season last year. And he's also the worst defensive player of the year in the history of the award, as far as I can tell. But yeah, I think he'll make a big impact in Memphis. And I thought the talk of him not being worth 2 first-round picks was fucking silly. But anyways, that's it. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.